The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Dani Laurel. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. President Bongbong Marcos says there is no need to appoint an official to head the government's oil spill response. Marcos Jr. explained that the Coast Guard, which has the assets needed, currently heads the efforts to contain the oil spill in Oriental Mindoro. He added that the PCG continues to coordinate with the experts from countries or other countries for assistance. The president also noted that agencies like the Environment and Social Welfare Departments as well as LGUs are already doing their part.
We do not have to organize a special group, a special committee, a special task force. They're ready already as it is. So as it stands, nakahati ang duties. Of course, the Coast Guard is heading the effort because they have the assets. On the ground, ang DNR, ina-assess nila kung ano yung damage, kung ano yung kailangan linisin, ano yung mga area na kailangan bantayan. That's what DNR's role is. The SWD comes in now to dahil yung mga mangingisda hindi makapangisda ngayon dahil hindi maganda yung isda dahil nakalubog sila sa langis.
Earlier on, the Budget Department had guaranteed enough funding for the oil spill response. DBM Secretary Amena Pangandaman said several agencies have started providing cash aid to the affected residents. Pangandaman also said the DBM is ready to allocate more funding, but they have not received any requests for additional funds so far.
Yung pamahalaan?
Meron po, I think nagsimula na po sila. Even, I think DNR, nagbigay na rin po. Meron din po silang assistance. DOH, nagbigay na rin po sila ng funding. And as of now, wala pa po akong nare-receive na request from them na nagkukulang po yung kanilang pondo.
Meanwhile, Moody's Analytics has slashed its 2023 growth projection for the Philippine economy to 5.7%. This is much lower than the 7.1% it gave in the month of February and is below the government's 6 to 7% full-year target. Moody's Analytics chief Asia-Pacific economist Stephen Cochrane cited elevated inflation and rising interest rates as the reasons behind this downgrade. Now, while the country's headline inflation eased in February, core inflation accelerated to 7.8%. That's the fastest pace in over 22 years. Cochrane also noted that the Philippines had the largest downward revision to its growth outlook across the Asia-Pacific region. Business groups warn that failure to resolve the value-added tax zero rating issue will have a detrimental impact on the growth of key export sectors such as IT BPM, electronics, and garments. This issue stems from the CREATE Act, which required registered business enterprises to prove local purchases of goods and services directly and exclusively used in the registered activities to be given a VAT zero rating. Otherwise, the purchase of such goods would be subject to 12% VAT. However, conflicting provisions related to the VAT zero rating of local purchases created confusion among exporters. The three largest exporter groups say exempting their local purchases from the 12% VAT would help them offer competitive prices in the international market. The groups say they are waiting for the Fiscal Incentives Review Board to come up with a final decision on the issue this month. On to some global updates. Bitcoin has topped 28,000 for the first time since June of 2022. That despite turmoil in the financial markets and the banking sector. The full story courtesy of Bloomberg's Carly Wana.
For much of 2022, Bitcoin traded like other risk assets, including US stocks. That is starting to change. Over the past several weeks, the S&P 500 has fluctuated after the failure of a handful of US banks. Meanwhile, on March 19th, Bitcoin broke above $28,000, hitting its highest level since the crypto crash last June. So why did Bitcoin go up? There's a few explanations. Number one, trouble for banks might have actually boosted crypto prices. Some investors see Bitcoin as an alternative to the traditional financial system. With the banks in turmoil, Bitcoin bulls say, put your money in crypto. Number two, recent US inflation data came in hotter than expected. Despite lots of evidence to the contrary, some Bitcoin fans think of the token as a hedge against rising prices. And that brings us to reason number three. Already, the US government and the Fed have added or pledged hundreds of billions of dollars to the banking system. That could increase money supply and, once again, send bulls to Bitcoin, or as they like to call it, digital gold. But Bitcoin's recent rise comes after a tough 2022. The token lost 60% of its value last year. A series of bankruptcies and scandals scuttled investor confidence. So, Bitcoin may have gone up, but it's still trading way, way below its peak. After all, in November 2021, the token went for more than $65,000.
Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin met in Moscow on Tuesday. That's the second day of Xi's state visit to Russia. During that meeting, Xi invited Mishustin to visit China and also called for regular meetings between the two nations' prime ministers. China's state news agency also reports that Xi is inviting Russian President Vladimir Putin to China this year for the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation.
You're also welcome to visit to China very soon so that you can establish close ties with the new premier of the State Council, Li Qiang. I am also very happy to meet with the Prime Minister and so many leaders today. I would like to exchange more ideas with you.
Now, despite 2 days of talks between Xi and Putin, there appears to be no sign of a diplomatic breakthrough just yet over Ukraine. Xi barely mentioned the conflict at all, saying that China had an impartial position on it. And for the White House, China's position is not impartial. The U.S. urges Beijing to pressure Russia to withdraw from Ukraine's sovereign territory to end the war. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. you're still watching One News Now. I'm Dani Laurel. The Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, or PAGCOR, is, quote, seriously considering selling its casinos. PAGCOR Chairman and CEO Alejandro Tenco plans to privatize its casinos nationwide to focus on its role as a regulator. Nikkei Asia reported that the sale could fetch about 80 billion pesos. The state-run gaming firm added that it plans to expand the permitted game offerings to include esports, online horse racing, and arcades. It is also eyeing to accredit payment gateway providers for domestic online gaming. The British banking giant HSBC says it will keep its retail banking segment in the Philippines. That is according to a report by the Philippine Star. The Star says HSBC is further strengthening its consumer banking business in the country. This even as other foreign banks exit the country's retail banking space amid a banking turmoil affecting global players. HSBC also says it appreciates playing in a relatively niche space for the personal banking side, as some of its clients are Filipinos who have families or investments abroad who need to do cross-border transactions. And TikTok bans deepfakes as it rolls out new guidelines amid increasing Western bans over cybersecurity and misinformation. Now, under its updated guidelines, deepfakes, also known as synthetic media generated by artificial intelligence of private figures and young people, are no longer allowed. This as TikTok says it strives to be fair, protect human dignity, balance freedom of expression, and prevent harm. Deepfakes for public figures are allowed in certain contexts but may not be used for political or commercial endorsements. TikTok also says that deepfakes or manipulated content that show realistic scenes must be labeled to indicate if they are fake or altered in some way. Some agriculture groups are opposing the government's plan to sell smuggled sugar at Kadiwa stores. The Samahang Industriya ng Agrikultura, or SINAG, warned about its health risks as these items don't usually undergo inspections. But the Agriculture Department said they will ensure that it is good for consumption before making it available at Kadiwa stores. According to the Sugar Regulatory Administration, smuggled sugar will be sold for as low as 70 pesos per kilo.
Pinaka-importante po yung testing because if it is not fit for human consumption, it will be destroyed. The public should be assured na hindi lalabas yan without proper testing.
And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Dani Laurel. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.